Hey guys, it's Heather from Here She Grows, and today I'm pruning hydrangeas. I'm getting a jump start on it because why not? It's been 70 degrees here in the Chicago area. Typically I prune my hydrangeas around the end of March, early April, but it's early March right now and it's 70 degrees today. The buds are swelling on my panicles especially, so it's a really good time to get this job crossed off my list. So you only need a few things to get it done. You need some pruners and some loppers depending on the size of your shrub. So if it's a big branch, loppers come in really handy. Smaller branches you can get away with a pruner. Easiest hydrangeas to prune in my opinion are the panicle hydrangeas. They are a beginner gardener's best friend. Very forgiving, so if you don't get it exactly right, it's okay. You'll have another chance to do it next year. They want to live. So panicle hydrangeas are a really good beginner gardener's best friend. This is a little lime hydrangea back here, and you can see it still has the flowers on it. Some of them I've removed over the winter time to use for fall and winter decor, but you want to get the flowers out of the way because trying to remove them once this shrub leaves out and starts forming buds is really, really difficult. So late winter, early spring is a really good time to get that job done. When you're deciding how much to cut your shrub back, a good rule of thumb is about 1/3 to 1/2. So if you take it down by 1/2, it may not get quite as big. So I usually take mine down by about 1/3. And the best way to make your cut is directly above a bud or a node. And the good way to decide where to make that cut is look for swelling. So springtime is a good time to do this because that's when the buds or the nodes start swelling. So you can see these swellings here, and they come in pairs on the panicle hydrangea. So you got a pair here, here, here. So depending on how far back you want to cut your panicle hydrangea, you want to take it down and cut it directly above, can you see that? One of these nodes. So let's say I wanted to take my hydrangea down by this much. So I'm looking for a node, a pair of nodes, and you can see it here. So I am simply just going to make my cut right here. And if you don't get it right, if it's not exactly the way if it doesn't turn out exactly the way you imagine the shape of it will turn out, don't sweat it. It's going to be fine. You're not going to kill it. They're extremely forgiving plants. I like to start my pruning from the top, and that way I can create the shape of my shrub, which is going to come down like that. So the side branches may not be as long as the top branches. What I want to avoid is cutting it off all the way across the top. I want to give it a little bit of shape. So I'm going to start cutting it down and take it down by about 1/3. And there you have it. This is my final result, and I have that nice curvature I was looking for. And I also took out anything that was crisscrossing through the center. There wasn't much because I've been really on top of it over the last several years. But you want to take out anything that is congesting the center of your shrub because that's going to create problems with airflow, and you want to make sure you've got nice flow through your shrub. And then also any teeny tiny little weak stems, weak branches, you can cut those out too because you don't want your shrub putting energy into weak branches that are not going to flower. So I have a really nice framework here. It looks like a skeleton right now, but this is a nice sturdy shrub. I've kept all of the sturdy branches and created that nice shape and took it down by about 1/3. And finally, I like to go in with a little bit of organic fertilizer and sprinkle it around the drip line of the shrub. So if you're not familiar with the drip line, your drip line is that outermost portion. Oh, almost fell over a rose bush. That would have not been good. But your drip line is the end of your branch, wherever rain would hit and fall down, that perimeter there would be your drip line. So that is where your fertilizer should go. Whatever fertilizer you're using, just go according to the recommendations on the back of the bag. I usually use rose tone fertilizer. However, all I have right now is holly tone. So I'm just going to use holly tone. It's going to be fine. It's an organic fertilizer, and I'm going to sprinkle it around the baseline. I like to do it also right before rain. We've got rain coming tomorrow, so this is a perfect time. I'd rather let Mother Nature water things in for me instead of having to shell out cash for a bigger water bill. I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle this all the way around the drip line and then move on to the next hydrangea. Then once I have the fertilizer in place, I like to go in and just scratch it into the surface slightly to get things started. All right, that one's done. Let's move on to the next one. Next up is another one of my favorite hydrangeas. This is Hydrangea curcifolia or Oakleaf hydrangea. And we are not going to prune this at all. In fact, if you prune it, you're going to lose all your buds for this year because it sets buds on last season's growth. So the difference between Oakleaf hydrangea and panicle hydrangea has to do with when they set their buds. So panicle hydrangea blooms on new wood, which is why we're able to cut it back. We're not sacrificing any buds by doing that. Whereas hydrangea curcifolia or Oakleaf hydrangea blooms on old wood. So all of the buds in this plant were set last year, last winter, last fall. So if I cut now, I'm not gonna have any flowers on this. The only thing I am going to cut are any of the old flowers. So I'm just gonna go in and take those out. Actually, they're just falling off easily. So any of the old flowers can come off. And aside from that, that is the only pruning I'm gonna do on Oakleaf hydrangea. Also too, I should mention that if you ever see any broken branches or anything that looks dead or dying or diseased, you can cut that out too. You don't want to keep that around. This variety in particular is great for small space gardens. This is called, oh my gosh, what is it called? Ruby slippers. This is ruby slippers, and Oakleaf hydrangea are hardy in zones 5 to 9. This is a dwarf form, so it gets to be about 3 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet tall and wide. So it's perfect for small spaces. It's a true multi-season shrub. It's got great spring. It looks beautiful in the spring when it leaves out. The flowers are so pretty. They're these large white panicles, and they start out white, and then they start going a crimson color, and then the really spectacular moment on this shrub is in the fall. It just glows. It's ruby, ruby red foliage. Beautiful. So definitely a multi-season shrub. Also too, don't overlook the branches. The bark on the branches is peeling, so it adds some winter interest as well. So there's a lot going on Oakleaf hydrangea. And like the panicle hydrangeas, my Oakleaf is going to get a little bit of fertilizer as well. And that's all there is to Oakleaf hydrangea. So it's minimal pruning. You don't want to prune on it. Blooms on old wood. So we're just taking off last year's flowers. This next one is Hydrangea animala pedicularis, or climbing hydrangea. And these guys get massive, but they take a really, really long time to get going, so you gotta be patient. And like the Oakleaf hydrangea, they bloom on old wood. So I'm not gonna do any pruning here. There's a few old flowers from last year. I just kind of break those off. And last year, I was touring Spring Meadow Nursery, and they had climbing hydrangea growing up poles that were probably 50 feet tall. They were massive, but I imagine it took a really long time to get there. This has only been in the ground for maybe 3 years now, and my goal is to train this to go all along this fence and just flower all over it. And it will be beautiful eventually. It's just an exercise in patience, as so many things in the garden are. So I'm not gonna do anything to this guy. I'm gonna give it a little fertilizer and take off some of these old blooms. And other than that, that's it. I want to show you up close too just how climbing hydrangea attaches to surfaces. So they have what are called aerial roots, and you can see them. Let me get it closer up here. You can see them coming off the stem here, and it's doing exactly what I want it to do and going right up the fence. And like the other hydrangeas, this guy's going to get a dose of fertilizer too. Now this next one is a smooth hydrangea, or Hydrangea arborescens, and many of us probably know the famous or infamous Annabelle hydrangea that was notorious for flopping. When the blooms got too heavy or there was rain, they always ended up on the ground and you had to tie them up. This is a variation of that. It's a smooth hydrangea called Invincible Limetta. So with this and with all of my smooth hydrangeas by the way are also native. So this has native parentage. It's not the species, but it has native roots. So with any of your smooth hydrangeas, you can take these down to the ground if you wanted to, but by leaving a little bit of that frame from last year up, it gives it a little more support. So I typically take mine down to about 12 inches. So I'll remove all of the top growth and leave about 12 inches of stem so that I've got a good framework, kind of supports all those stems. However, with the newer variety, like the Invincible series, they really keep their shape well. There is no flopping. I like to leave a little bit of framework just in case. So I'm gonna take this down, and you don't have to be really particular about it either. I don't look for buds like I do on my panicle hydrangea. I just go for it. So I eyeball it about a foot up from the ground, and then I just go ahead and cut. Like the panicle hydrangea, it blooms on new wood. So I'm able to cut this back as harshly as I want to cut it back, and it's still going to flower for me. And the Invincible series blooms repeatedly. I mean, you cut off the dead blooms. If you're deadheading regularly, you will get more flowers. So that's the cool thing about it. No flopping and plenty of flowers. It's a win-win. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I got 2 more to do. Now, let's say you had a hedge of these guys, like a mass planting of it. You could even come in with a saw and just level it. Don't be precious with it. They're gonna come back, they're gonna flower and be beautiful, and you don't have to worry about it. They are a gardener's dream because they are easy and they give more than they take. And if you're looking for a smooth hydrangea or hydrangea arborescens that's super pollinator friendly, I've got a great recommendation for you. So Cuba Center did a study. They observed smooth hydrangea over the course of several years to determine what was most pollinator friendly, what was most frequented by pollinators. And what they found was a variety called Haas Halo smooth hydrangea. So it gets to be about 3 to 5 feet tall and wide, and you cut it back, just like I showed you. It's a smooth hydrangea. It's a lace cap hydrangea, so if you're looking for something that will fit a small space, that is very pollinator friendly and can take all morning sun. Actually, the more sun you give it, the more floriferous it'll be. But if you're giving it a lot of sun, you want to make sure you're giving it plenty of water too. So I located my Haas Halo hydrangea on the east side of my house where it gets morning sun, afternoon shade, and it's thriving. So that went in last year, and I'm really excited to see that thrive and get bigger and watch all the pollinators that are attracted to it. This next hydrangea I want to show you is one that I grow because I can't grow hydrangea macrophylla or the big leaf hydrangeas. They simply won't flower, or when they do flower, the flowers form on the interior of the shrub because all of the outer flowers along those outer branches are killed off in the winter time. So macrophyllas bloom on old wood, which is why all that top growth, all those top buds die off, and I get those flowers on the inside. Some of the macrophyllas now bloom on old and new wood, but I've not had much luck with them. So instead of the macrophylla, I've gone with hydrangea serrata or mountain hydrangea. So the mountain hydrangeas are native to the mountainous regions of Korea and Japan, so they have a stronger likelihood that they're going to retain those flower buds that they've set in during last year's growing season, and then they also form on new wood as well. So my shrub here looks beautiful. This will be its 3rd summer in the garden. It still stayed small because I relocated it from another part of the yard where it wasn't thriving. It was getting too much sun. And speaking of sun, this is also another one of those that is on the east side of my house because I don't have an irrigation system. I'm the irrigation system. So I try to put my plants where I know they're going to do their best because I don't want to have to be standing here in hot weather watering these guys constantly. So putting it on the east side of the house gives it morning sun, afternoon shade, and they thrive. So this past winter, this shrub really hasn't been challenged, although it did come through last winter very, very well, and that was significantly harder than this winter. So I've got buds all up and down this shrub. I don't need to prune it at all. It's going to be just fine. I can go ahead and take off any of the flower buds or the dead flowers from last year. I can take those off, but other than that, I'm going to leave it alone. And that's all there is to it. And really what I'm getting at is that you're not going to kill your plants. So even if you butcher them, and I've done that. When I was first starting out, I butchered some of these plants. Even if you do that, they're not going to die. They might look terrible the next year. Maybe they don't flower. But they're still going to be back. They'll come back for you the following year, and you can try it all over again. So I hope this video empowers you, and as long as you know what type of hydrangea you have, you'll understand the way it blooms, when it sets buds. Does it set buds in old wood or new wood? And then you can prune accordingly. So if you do want to prune plants like your macrophylla or your oakleaf, if you want to prune them immediately after they flower, because waiting much longer than that, they will have already started setting up buds for the following year. So try to prune anything if you're going to do it, if it needs it for whatever reason, do it immediately after flowering to make sure you have as many flowers as possible. So be brave. Don't be afraid of it, get after it, and you're always going to learn something from it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.